possibly push further into the Hittite domain.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Hittites had plenty of advance warning. Since the campaign of 1275, they knew that the Egyptians would be returning. So, your king, Hittite
Muwatalli.
Empire of Muwatalli, began preparing to to hold back Egypt and their attack on Kadesh at the same time that Ramses was ramping up his preparation for the Battle of Kadesh. So both empires were preparing for it at the same time. As you said, the Hittite Empire moved its capital closer for better control of the region. And Ramses II had also moved at least his military command to another city closer to Syria, which I believe he
After
named
himself.
just
Yeah.
the city of Ramses.
A very popular
Yes,
title for
exactly.
most people.
And you had mentioned, oh yeah, oh yeah, and you had mentioned the forges in that city that
He
Ramses had been
could
preparing.
they churned out 1,000 weapons
You
a
know,
week and 250 chariots a week, according to what I read.
yeah, that is crazy. So both sides are preparing for this battle. They're amassing resources and soldiers. Both sides are hiring mercenaries and preparing for
Right.
a potential conflict of 1274.
And eventually that time comes, and Muwatalli, he knows Egypt's gonna, come from the south again, but he kind of gathers that it's gonna be Kadesh.
Yep.
So both sides, this is why this is considered the first pitched battle, is they both recognize the importance of the spot they're taking, and both recognize they're going to have to fight for it. So Muwatalli
Yeah.
comes down from his capital.
Hmm.
He has forts garrisoned near the city, but not quite in it. And so he sets up camp just north of the
Hmm.
city, beyond like a small mound or hill, and that's where he hides his forces. Yeah,
Hiding the
and
bulk of his
that's where
forces.
Egypt comes up.
Hmm. And yeah, yeah. So Ramses the second, he's leading his army up from the south. Um, he had divided them into four different sort of army groups, named after the gods from the various cities that they were raised in. So approximately 16,000 troops on the Egyptian side, 16,000 troops and 2,000 chariots. For the Hittite Empire, it was about 15,000 troops and 10,000 chariots. Speaking for the Egyptians, like I said, they divided into four different groups. So Amun, um, raised in Thebes, was led by Ramses himself, and each of these army groups were divided into about 4,000 men apiece. Following Amun, there is Ra, raised in Heliopolis. There is Ptah, raised in Memphis, and Set, raised in Ramses' new military city that he established the previous year. Ramses managed to get pretty far ahead of his other three army groups with Amun. So Amun was the first to arrive in Kadesh in May of 1274. And then later Ra would come up to join him, but Ptah and Set were still very far behind, trying to catch up to Amun's position outside of Kadesh.
Yeah.
You know, this has been debated, like you said previously. You had mentioned when we were discussing this beforehand, that
Yes.
this is hotly debated as to whether or not it was a good move to divide his army up in
We'll
this
let other people
fashion.
decide that.
But
We're
we'll leave
just doing
that
highlights
for
right now.
when we talk about the Battle of Kadesh. We'll
So the
let
actual
people decide
battle,
based on what
uh,
we talk about.
Egypt
Oh yeah, absolutely.
camps on the west side of the city, northwest side of the city. They have enough time to set up camp, put up a statue, and they captured a Hittite raiding
Yep.
party, as well as two spies sent out by Muwatalli himself. The two
Yep.
spies are supposed to, yes, they were intercepted first, and they're supposed to tell Pharaoh
Yeah.
or
So the
Ramesses
two
that
spies were intercepted
the
first.
Hittites are far off, but not quite there yet, to lure him to a false sense of security.
Mhm. Yeah. Telling Ramses that absolutely. The spies told you know Ramses that the king of the Hittites was afraid of the size of Ramses' host, and still had his forces up near Aleppo, far to the north. So as you said, Ramses set up camp outside the city of Kadesh,
which
waiting for the rest of his
is
army to
a
arrive
lot
so
of
he could take
free
control of
time, I feel
Kadesh
like.
and
Well,
managed to put up a statue
after they
of
capture the
Amun,
raiding party,
his
it's
chosen
revealed
god of
that the
favor.
Hittites are actually a lot closer. In fact, they're on the other side of the hill. And so Ramses
Hmm.
decides to hold council to figure out what his next move is. And as he's in the middle of the staff meeting, that is when
Oh yeah,
Muwatalli decides to
yep, other
attack.
side of the river.
So Muwatalli moves in and actually manages to get into the camp
Hmm.
before Ramses manages to escape.
Yep, absolutely. Oh yeah. So yeah, so Ramses, upon realizing how close the Hittites were, um, he sent messengers south to bring up his army as fast as possible, as well as sending some messengers north to go to Amun and bring the mercenaries that had been hired beforehand to aid Ramses' position. Um, and as Ramses' third army group, Ptah, was making their way to Ramses' position. They got caught in the open by sort of a patrolling group of about 2,000 Hittite
Mhm.
chariots. And so that group, that army of about 5,000 men, about 4,000 men, um, only had a few dozen chariots with them, possibly, because they were all divided equally among the groups. Um, they came under attack from that Hittite patrol, and that Hittite patrol of 2,000 chariots managed to turn that group of about 4,000 men, routing part of that army, while a small portion of it fled to Ramses' camp. And when that group fled into his camp, that Hittite group of about 2,000 chariots began attacking the camp directly, almost pushing to the center. Um, Ramses uh, was in extreme danger. He offered a prayer to Amun, and then Ramses managed to lead his contingents of chariots to flank the Hittite chariots, uh, like around sort of like the northern end of the camp, and managed to turn that Hittite group away. Ramses began to give chase, but at that time, the king
It's
of the
impressive the way
Hittites
he does it
brought
too,
over
because
the
Ramses
remainder of
just
his
like hops in
chariots,
a
leaving his
chariot and just
15,000 contingent,
flanks
of
the enemy,
infantry
comes
behind. He
around,
brought
and then
7,000 chariots and began
like the
attacking
battle like
Ramses'
carries
camp,
on for
which
like
only now had
hours.
infantry left inside, like
And
you
when it
said.
starts getting, oh yeah, he's trying
Oh
to
yeah,
pursue him. He
absolutely.
flanks him. They form a line. They
Mhm.
like kind of take
Oh
turns,
yeah.
attacking each other, counterattacks, and that's when the mercenaries from the north
Oh yeah,
arrive.
absolutely. Ramses is trying to pursue this group and destroy them, and yeah, yep, yep. So the mercenaries from Amaru arrived while Ramses' camp was still under siege. um, so the king of the Hittites managed to, really batter Ramses' camp. Um, but just before that army was routed, the mercenaries came in from the north,
So
flanking the
Muwatalli pulls
Hittites
back. He
from the north, and
retreats. He
Ramses
sends his
managed to turn
forces
around
back
and come back
to
to aid
his
his
camp,
camp.
back to the
So
nearby
Ramses began
fortresses,
attacking the
and
Hittite
that is when
line
the
from the
Egyptians have
south.
to
So now surrounded
kind
on
of
three
like
sides,
decide: are we going to
the
siege
king of
or
the
are we going
Hittites
to have
began
to
to
go?
pull
Because we're
back.
kind of low on sources right now.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. So probably a good half of Ramses' army was under strength. The the Set Corps arrived after the battle. They had not managed to make it to the battle time. Ptah was all but destroyed, and Amun and Ra, the other two army groups that were with Ramses II, were heavily depleted. And you know, like you said, the king of the Hittites managed to garrison fortresses nearby.
So this
At
brings
the
us to our
same
final
time,
question:
the
who
Egyptians would
won?
need to take Kadesh, which obviously they can't maintain a siege of
And so
Kadesh
did the Hittites.
because the Hittites would come up from behind, and they can't siege multiple fortresses that the Hittites are
Fortunately,
holding.
there cannot
So,
be more than one
low
winner.
on resources and low on troops, the Egyptians would have to flee the field. Mhm. Yeah. So the Egyptians reported that they won when they returned. The surprisingly, yeah. But yeah, eventually the Hittites, yeah, regained control. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Muwatalli would
so
not attend.
Ramses
He
would
had
launch a later
died
campaign to
sometime
take
after the
back more
war.
land, but I do not
Um,
believe he managed to take back Kadesh.
yeah.
16 years
Um,
post battle,
at this treaty,
the Hittite
they
Empire and the
basically
Egyptian
decide
Empire
that
would sign
like
a peace treaty,
like
which actually that's one of the
we
first
like no one
peace
like we
treaties of its
both
kind that we
won.
have recorded
It's
of.
totally fine. Like no big
Um,
deal. Um, but in our own professional opinions,
yep,
I think
one
the
of his
Egyptians
sons
won
would
the
help sign
battle,
that
but
treaty.
the Hittites won the war. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Egyptians managed to save themselves from total destruction. Um, and the Hittites did lose,
Yeah.
you know, like 2,000 chariots, but you have to keep in mind that, Ramses also had maybe 2,000 chariots, and probably a vast portion of those were lost. Um, so, Ramses managed to avoid the destruction of himself and his army, but the
Yeah.
Hittites definitely won in the long run,
All right.
because they were
And
able to
that is
maintain
our
regional
podcast
control,
episode for today.
even post peace treaty, which is pretty
Thank
interesting that
you.
a few decades following